You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And you don't know why you do what you do if you're doing what you do and never thought about it. But, fortunately for us, we're chimps with metacognition, right?
Yeah.
Which means you can think about what you think about.
Right.
Welcome to the Business Owner Spotlight by AudateMedia. In this interview show, you will learn how to succeed through other people's stories, challenges that they overcame, and how they are winning in this new economy. You'll learn what to do in your business, what not to do in your business, and how others are succeeding. Tune in every week to discover new stories, new businesses, and new ideas.
Super excited here to have my man Brett Raftery in the building on the Business Owner Spotlight with Andy Audate at AudateMedia. Man, thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, man. Pleasure.
Man, so we met at one of my good friends' house. We were there chilling, eating steak, doing it big.
That's
and
right.
then we connected. That's what I think about like networking. How important is networking to you?
It's everything.
Why?
It's relationships that are the primary focus in business.
I just wrote like an ebook, and I was talking about it's not about what you know. Sometimes it's about who you know. The relationships.
A lot of times.
So when you go into like different events, networking events, what is one way that you go out and you network? Like, how do you build the relationships with complete strangers?
It's honestly it's something that's, at least for me, personality type. Are you familiar with Roger James Hamilton by chance?
Nah.
So he's got a system called wealth dynamics. Mm-hmm. And one of the cores of that system is they put you through like a 16 personalities or a Myers-Briggs type of test. Mm-hmm. And
is this like a DISC assessment?
Exactly. It's the same thing, except for it's kind of wrapped around like Eastern nomenclature, and it's done like with a square. Okay. And what it comes up with is your profile and your genius. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it's super simple questions, like 5 questions to pop up each, and it's done in like 15 minutes or something. But so for me, it came up as what's called a supporter/Blaze genius. Okay?
Blaze genius.
So I was like 50% Blaze, and then I was like 25% tempo. Okay. So Blaze is like the right side of the square, tempo is the bottom of the square. Blaze genius is basically somebody who is an extrovert, is somebody who likes to work through other people, is somebody who likes to magnify, and a tempo is kind of more of a grounded person, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas let's say the opposite side from a Blaze genius is what's called a lord, and a steel genius, I believe, is on the other side of the square. And so a steel genius is the exact opposite, right? Like they'd rather shoot themselves in the head than have to go network at a party or talk to people or get on stage. They would rather sit in a maybe a lighted room, but they'd rather sit in a room and do spreadsheets, do financials, you know what I mean? They're more of a data-driven type of human, where I would rather shoot myself in the head than sit around and look at a spreadsheet all day. Yeah. So I can't tell you that I specifically taught myself and went out to taught myself to be a good networker. It's definitely a function of my personality. Ever since I was a little kid. Part of the
Blaze genius and supporter, or Brett as overall as a person?
Well, they're the same, right? Because Brett as an overall person is a Blaze genius and a supporter. So the corners are also like a star and a deal maker. So it's a pretty interesting thing. If you get a chance, it's
pretty in depth.
Yeah, it's pretty in depth, but it's not just in depth, because they're all pretty in depth, right? They give you multiple pages of who you are, what you act like, what you don't like, and really for this particular thing in wealth dynamics, it was put together so that you would know where to place yourself in a company, know where to place your employees as well. Okay, because they also go on this thing called flow. When in business, you should always be in your trust and your flow. Okay. Mm-hmm. So trust is obvious, right? So I've known you for a little bit. So, you're going to trust me to come to you and say, hey, I want to start this project, and, will you help me out with it? And you're not wasting your time, right? But flow is more of, you ever read Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wiles' book, Stealing Fire?
No.
Amazing book. But flow is they describe flow with an acronym called STIR, S-T-E-R. And so they go into it a little more in depth than the kind of flow that maybe you're thinking of, but basically,
when I hear flow, I'm thinking of like that experience of just continually creating and creating and creating upon creating.
Right. Or like, so let me break down the STIR real quick. So it's selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness of information. And so what they basically did was the book, they kind of went around the world and they interviewed everybody from the Naval SEALs to world-class athletes to people like monks, people who do a lot of meditation, mantra meditation, or they do that Sufi type dancing. And drugs, actually.
And drugs?
Yeah,
Okay.
psychedelics or more on that side of the house. I'm not really talking about like coke and stuff like that.
Okay,
I'm talking about stuff that
shrooms.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Stuff that gets you in that
State of mind.
state of mind where you're hyper focused as well. I like, it's like flying a plane, dribbling a basketball, all that stuff where there's nothing else when you're doing that, right? And so I don't know if Roger is that deep on that, but he talks about following your lines of trust and flow.
Two things that you just brought up right now. You said the words flying a plane, and you brought up drugs.
Yeah.
Now you fly planes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that background about you flying planes, like your background with flying planes.
Okay. So when I was 10 years old, I was on my dad's. My dad at the time was living on a sailboat, and we were cruising down the St. Johns River in Jacksonville, and I looked up at the military jets flying. I'm like, Dad, I'm flying those jets. I'm flying military jets. And as a father, when your 10-year-old says something to you like that, you're like, oh yeah, that's nice, son. Yeah, well, maybe sounds good. We'll see. And so it never went away for me. A lot of kids love airplanes when they're little, and then it kind of goes away for them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it didn't. I'm not going to say I went the direct path because I've always been a fun-loving guy, and ended up going to college. Went to Florida State because you gotta be an officer in order to fly jets for the military. And at the time, that's the only thing that was on my mind. And so graduated from Florida State, and then went into the Air Force to fly jets.
Okay.
And so that was, well, let me back up a little bit. My aunt actually gave me a present of money. It was my aunt. And
he's like, who was that?
well, I was seeing my aunt and my grandma, but no, it was my aunt. And so when I was 16, I got my pilot's license, my private pilot's license. So you can actually solo a plane by yourself when you're 17.
When you're 17
believe
years old.
it or not. Yeah.
Wow. And so the second part of that was the drugs. Have you done or ever seen someone do drugs while flying?
While flying?
While flying or before they flew?
No.
No, because that's a real question, and the reason why I asked, I was watching this movie, and in the movie you see this guy smoking weed before he goes out for a drive. Now I know it's not crazy to smoke weed before you drive.
Right.
It's not the craziest thing.
It's not.
So I was curious. This was actually recent. I was actually curious. I said, I wonder if a pilot who smoked weed before driving, feeling comfortable, would he actually go ahead and fly high?
Okay.
Fly high.
I wouldn't, but the bottom line is, look, if you're flying a plane every single day, it's like driving that car.
Yeah.
Right? So you're probably pretty comfortable with it, but here's the deal. It's super frowned upon, man. Like, most companies that are employing pilots, they drug test. And to be just 100% honest with you, most pilots I know, they're not drug users.
Gotcha.
Now, I should caveat that because obviously alcohol is a drug, and pilots are sometimes known for being big drinkers, right? But I find pilots are kind of fall into two categories, which is either super nerdy and straight-laced, or kind of wild men. You know what I mean? Depending upon
is this
their backgrounds.
only in the military world?
No, I would say it's in probably both worlds, both civilian and military. Military, obviously, you've got to be straight-laced. I mean, you can be drug tested anytime. Well, in the civilian world too. I mean, again, any corporation that you're flying for. So no. I mean, look. Why do you fly and why do you get high on drugs? It's the same reason. So why you don't really have to combine the two. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is they both put you in flow, right? Now, again, not all drugs put you in flow.
Yeah.
But flying definitely puts you in flow. I can tell you if you're doing air refueling like I used to in all three of the heavy jets that I flew in the Air Force, you are not thinking of did you leave the iron on at home? Okay. Again, you're in that mind state of there's nothing else except for what you're doing. Right.
So being in flow is you're really talking about being present.
Totally. Yeah.
Being present in what you're doing.
Being completely present and completely focused. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And so again, kind of going back to the Roger Hamilton thing, what they're basically saying is your teammates in your business, and I'll get to this later. I actually, when I was in this workshop, I actually reached out to two guys who were on the opposite side of the square of me, and we started a company together about a year ago. Okay. So that I took it to heart because it makes total sense, right? Here's the other thing: when you're in flow, it doesn't happen to you. You're not frustrated, right? You're in that beautiful space of presence, and you're in that space of, again, richness of information, total engrossment, but it's also very easy space. So you're not burning a bunch of energy, right? So if you ask me, okay, Brett, I'm going to need you to, get those TPS reports done, whatever, some Excel bullshit, right? I might be able to do it. I'm not a stupid person, right? But it's gonna sap my energy.
What does it feel like outside? So what does it feel like, the difference between flow and not being in flow? What would you say the flow feels like? If you can elaborate it for those who haven't been in flow.
Well, I would say most everybody's been in flow at one time or another. I mean, you could even say to some degree you're in flow when you're driving a car in certain ways. Definitely when you're riding a motorcycle. A lot of times, I find that one of the things obviously that can put you in flow pretty quickly is if you're in a dangerous situation, right? And that's why I kind of related it to flying. You're not gonna, if you're flying an approach, or if you're in a two heavy jets or like this, air refueling over Afghanistan, which I did lots of times, or Iraq, you're as present as you can be, right?
You're not thinking about what's happening back home.
Not at all.
What's happening back at the camp.
You have a 450,000 pound jet with however many people on board, and you're 50 feet from another full size, think of airliners, think of two airliners coming together, right?
Yeah.
So you're literally, approximately 50 feet from that guy attached with a metal straw, right? To get the fuel out of the plane. And if you don't get that fuel, then you can't complete your mission. And then you're not going to be flying. You're not going to be in that seat too long if that happens more than once or twice.
Is that metal straw flexible?
Okay, so
does it have to be like
It's actually not flexible in the way you're thinking, like this.
Like this. I'm thinking like that.
Yeah. So what happens is you come in, and the metal straw can go out and in. It can go left and right, and it can go up and down.
Okay.
All right, but there's parameters on that. So in order to make sure that straw stays in the plane, that the pilot who's coming up for the
your plane.
Yes. The pilot. So it's kind of twofold. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a KC-135, but when the boom comes down, it's got the little wings on it.
Okay.
So you actually have a boom operator in the back who has a little joystick, and he's laying on his belly. It's pretty cool. You can go back there, when you're Air Force, you can go get rides with them and see what they do as well. But you're laying on your stomach. Okay, and you're looking out this little window, and you're looking at this plane come up to you, whatever plane it is, whether it's fighters or heavies. And then you have this little joystick, and you're actually flying the boom. So you are controlling it so that you can help marry it up to the port when the plane comes up. So now the pilot has to use visual references. So they'll teach you visual references when you're air refueling, and then you also have a set of lights as well that tells you where you are in that kind of box.
Are you going the same speed as the other plane?
Yeah, exactly. There's like a whole way of doing the join up, if you will, the meet up, to, yes. And you pre-plan speeds, you pre-plan locations, you pre-plan like the whole activity of how you do the rejoin when you're coming in for air refueling as well.
So that sounds like, the part of the mission or the trip. That sounds like the part of the trip that is pretty common, right? Experiences like refueling midair is pretty common. Yeah. So give me an experience that you had with how many years have you been in?
I was in 10 years, 2 wars.
10 years, 2 wars. Wow, man. Thank you for your service first and foremost, man.
No worries.
The freedom that we have is because of people just like yourself.
Appreciate it.
And so if we look at your 10 years, your decade in the military and 2 wars. What's been the craziest experience that you probably will never forget? Because if we talk about something that's common, what's crazy?
In the heavy world, you're not flying a fighter. So, I mean, we were shot at a couple times while we were over there. So probably one night coming in on what's called the bridge from Pakistan to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Something got fairly close as far as something lit up the sky, fairly close to us.
Do you know what it was?
No, don't.
Firework?
I don't think so. Not flying that high.
Okay.
So who knows? But I would say actually it was one of the nights trying to air refuel, where it was a dark sky. We're blacked out anyway, lights out, because you don't want anybody on the ground knowing you're up there, and then just bad weather and at night. And actually, I was a co-pilot at the time, so I wasn't doing the air refueling. But man, that boom was swinging around wild, and it was like one of those things where, I literally a couple times was like, ducking my head and like, oh shit, is that thing coming through the window?
Oh my gosh.
So I'd say that's probably about the scariest thing. So nothing too crazy.
I mean,
there.
that's something I think about if I was sleeping, man. That shit would wake me up. like if I had a dream, like because you're saying like you're in the plane,
yeah,
and you duck your head mentally because you think that it could potentially protrude into the plane.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
And not on top of that, it was pitch black.
It was pitch black.
Is there any type of lights whatsoever?
Sometimes they'll turn the, like the lights, the little marker lights I was telling you about to tell you where you are.
Yeah.
They'll have those on sometimes on a low level, but they don't have all the lights they would normally have on for obvious reasons, right? You don't want anybody seeing you from the ground.
So are you completely dependent in that scenario, or any scenario when you're flying in the dark? Are you completely dependent on like radar?
No, you can you're damn close together, dude. So you're depending on visual the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. And how about when you're flying by yourself at night?
What about it then?
Are you completely dependent on radar?
Not necessarily, unless you're in what's called IFR conditions. So instrument flight rules.
Okay.
And so that's when your head's in the cockpit and you're flying solely by instruments. It doesn't happen all the time. It actually doesn't happen a ton because obviously you can climb or descend to get out of cloud layers. So, it's not something that honestly, if you add up all the hours that you're sitting in that airplane, that it's a very, very small percentage.
Very small?
Yeah.
Ever in a predicament where something at night or even during the day, something in front of you that you didn't catch on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, you always got to keep your head out the window. I mean, you do have a lot of planes have what's called TCAS system that is basically will show you on a radar depiction or on a multifunction display where another plane is, as long as they're what's called squawking using a transponder, which sends out a signal.
Okay.
Type of thing.
Gotcha. I'm sure there's some in missions that don't squawk.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not squawking a lot of the times if you are in a combat scenario. You're making sure that you're just not putting anything out there. Right?
That makes sense. So now, 10 years, in the military, what are you transitioning to now? First of all, when did you get out?
So that was back in 2007.
Okay. So what does 2007 to now and in the future look like for you?
That's okay. How much time we got? Anyway, so in 2007, basically what started to happen to me was I'm a super curious guy, and I read a lot of books. And
yeah.
I'm always kind of looking for that next dopamine spike in the sense of, again, kind of going through the Stealing Fire book. Their contention is basically that as a human being, we're all looking for those dopamine spikes or whatever, brain-derived nootropic factors that, turn you on, whether it's something that speeds you up or something that calms you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've always been, I guess you could call it an adrenaline junkie, but not really, because I'm not at the highest end of adrenaline junkie, but, scuba license at 14, POTS license at 17, 5 jet licenses in the military. So I started reading actually a lot of Robert Kiyosaki books. And so I was like, no shit. You can own your own time. You can still make money. You don't have to work for somebody else. That type of thing. And
what got you into that in the first place? Like into Robert Kiyosaki, or even just a search of personal development overall?
Well, those are two different things, but so that's business and personal development. Business, I was really never interested in.
Did you search personal development first, or did you search business first?
Definitely personal development, because I started getting into meditation. I had a hippie type shop teacher, back in the day. And he had that. Do you know who Ram Dass is?
No.
Dr. Richard Alpert?
No.
Okay, so in the space of, he had a very interesting story. He was a guy that was a college professor. He was friends with Timothy Leary is? LSD, all that whole deal? No? Okay. You're a young man. No. It's all good. And these guys are older cats. Actually, Ram Dass just died probably a couple of years ago.
Okay, gotcha.
But Ram Dass was, his name was Dr. Richard Alpert, and he was a college professor. And this is when people first started kind of experimenting with LSD, right? And so him and Timothy Leary are like pioneers of psychedelics. And so they started, experimenting with it and kind of just having that very consciousness expanding experience from it. Mm-hmm. And so he literally I think he was even tenured at the time. Like, he was pretty solid in his career. He had a nice house, nice cars, a little plane. He used to fly a little, stuff like that. And he basically was like, after doing LSD multiple times, he really wanted to figure out consciousness and who am I? Why am I here? What is this? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So he did what a lot of Westerners did back in that time frame. They said, okay, let's go to India, right? Because that's where, probably the deepest levels of not just there, obviously China and Japan as well. They're all Enlightenment traditions, right? Yeah. Where there's a lot of meditation and there's a lot of that inner work, with your eyes closed and your mouth shut.
In your own mind. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to figure things out from there. And so it's a really cool book, as it was the first book that he wrote. And it's a kind of a trippy looking book. It's got, normal words in it, but then it's got like all these like trippy looking pages. And he describes his experience of going over to India and meeting all these different type of like guru guys, guys. He described one guy, took a vow of celibacy. He doesn't talk at all. All he would do is write with like a piece of chalk on a chalkboard on his neck. He was in one of these villages. But he kind of described some kind of supernatural type of powers that some of these guys would have, whether it be strength or...
Did you learn about that?
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of started my personal growth thing, the kind of the inner work. Okay, how do I tick? How does the human chimp tick? And how can I optimize this?
Because you were interested in LSD?
No, not so much. I mean, I was more interested probably in meditation.
Okay, medication. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I've done psychedelics. But anyway, so, he had this experience where he ended up meeting this one guru guy, and he had a bunch of LSD on him. Mm-hmm. And he gave him like this was the guy like everybody in the village like kind of worshipped.
Yeah.
And he ended up giving the guy like large amounts of LSD and didn't seem to affect him at all. And so that's what got him going down that path. So, he kind of made the transition, which obviously a lot of people do. They'll go try a psychedelic, or they'll try something that gives them that kind of expansion of consciousness, that thing that kind of shifts your mind in a sense with, there might be more to this.
There's more.
There might, obviously it's some scientists go through too because they study it.
But you learn about this, and then where does the Robert Kiyosaki come in?
Yeah, so that's kind of a separate thing in the sense where, I don't know, I just started getting interested in entrepreneurship towards the end of my military career. So I was, when it was coming up to where I could either stay or go type of thing. Uh-huh. So I was living in Oklahoma City at the time, and I started buying I bought 2 triplexes, and I had a couple ATM machines around the city, mm-hmm. which I think I was making like $100 a month or something. Awesome doing that. But, it kind of got me out there in the sense of being an entrepreneur and starting to just kind of switch your mindset. And I actually took a course by Robert Kiyosaki at the time that it was like, think it, be it. I forget it was. It was like, anyway, what it really did, it shifted the mindset from the mindset of an employee who's getting a paycheck to somebody who is creating something that creates results that they get paid for. Right.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And also even more so with Robert Kiyosaki in real estate, it was, passive income was always the big thing there. And so he had a rich dad, he had a poor dad. And his poor dad was actually very intelligent. He was a college professor, et cetera, but he wasn't an entrepreneur. And so that's what the book was about, was like the juxtaposition between the two, right?
And then what did that do for you? Like, so that opened up your
it just like opened up my mind in the sense of, because I came from government parents in the sense where my dad was a DEA agent. Okay. And my mom ended up working for the Federal Bureau of Prisons as well. And so their mantra to me was always, hey, Brett, you're going to college. I mean, it was like never a question in my mind. It was like, when you go to college, while you're in college, after college, like I didn't even know anything different. You know what I mean? So they're
I feel you on that too, by the way.
Okay. So they basically are like, look, go to college, get a good government job, and get a nice pension. Okay, which is not bad advice. It's actually really good advice. But man, I'm not one to follow advice all the time.
Robert Kiyosaki, so I read his book and I listened to his podcast, and he was talking about like not to even depend on the pension and how backtracked the pensions are. So,
well, that's more of a recent thing. So when they were preaching that to me, you actually still had big corporations out there that had, defined benefits, right?
Gotcha.
So you're right. That is completely changed. And so,
so would you tell your kids the same thing that your parents told you? As far as like the
I wouldn't tell them yes and no. Like I would tell them about that, but I would also tell them about the entrepreneurial side of the house, right?
Yeah. So they make the choice. Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, you're here as a guide for your children. You're not supposed to be living vicariously through them or making them do what you did, and that's all kind of bullshit if you ask me. Let them be their own human being. Show them where the pitfalls are. Obviously, where you stepped on your own crank. And that you don't want them to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I would say definitely I've given him both sides of my son. He's 17. So I've given him both sides of the story for sure. And the benefits and the downside of both sides of the story, right? Because there's lots of downsides of being an entrepreneur as well.
I mean, there's downsides of being an employee. Well, which one do you foresee? Like, which one do you want as the father? We know it's your son's choice, but which one do you want?
Again, I want him to make up his own mind and be his own man and live his own life. You'd be a liar if you didn't say that it tickles you a little inside when your kid maybe follows in your footsteps a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's ego. I'm not sure, probably. But at the same time, if you're getting joy out of something, right?
You can tell your conscience, like you're even saying like, hey, that's ego. That's like you're aware as to what's going on in your own brain. That's interesting, man. That's dope.
Thanks.
So back to your son, that it tickles you inside to
yeah. So I mean, he's already kind of on a little path of entrepreneurship. Like he's been working for a furniture store, but then he started seeing that she didn't do deliveries for the people. And sometimes they needed deliveries or they needed certain stuff moved around. And he said, hey, is it okay if I, do that and they pay me? And she was like, yeah, no problem. So now he's not only working at the furniture store, but then he moonlights and is making good money on the side by either delivering the furniture for them or helping them with moving or whatever it is.
So he saw a problem and he put a solution to it.
Right, exactly. And my ex-wife's side of the family, they're entrepreneurs. They had their own painting company and stuff like that. So he got to see that a little bit on that side of the house. They also had some real estate, like a apartment complex, small apartment complex. And so, yeah, he's gotten to see both sides. So it's kind of a really great thing for him. Nothing was hammered into his mind, which I definitely had some things hammered into my mind. I had to kind of, just sift through it in the sense of, we all have cognitive bias, right? From the way you're raised, from the things your parents were preaching to you, to the country you live in, to the religion you're taught, to the, all the shit that is programmed into your head before you're old enough to be able to have the cognition to sift through that and go, now, wait a second. Is this something that I actually looked at and weighed and measured? Or is this some shit that got programmed in my head? And I'm not saying all the stuff that's been programmed in your head is bad. That's not my contention here. But at the same time, wouldn't it be nice to know? Like, wouldn't it be nice to dig a little and to watch your thoughts a little and then to ask yourself questions like, why do I believe this?
I like that. It's you really had two options, right? You got what you said, weighed and measured, and then the other one
Is
programmed.
Yeah.
And I can see that there's some unconditional programming in the world where it's like some people just aren't aware of where they got this information from.
They're not. Do you know who Sam Harris is?
Doesn't ring a bell.
So Sam Harris is pretty popular, actually. He's a neuroscientist. He's written a shit ton of books, actually. He's a genius, dude. You got to listen to his podcast. He's on Rogan's podcast as well, but he's a very measured dude. So not only is he a neuroscientist, but he's also a big meditator. And
do you still meditate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daily, or actually try to do it throughout the day as well. But we can get into that in a little bit. Anyway, Sam Harris has a book called Free Will, or Free Choice, or something like that. And the interesting thing about the book is his contention in that book is that we actually have very little to no free will, which is, I'm not 100% subscribing with that, because I definitely feel like if you are somebody who's intuitive or somebody who takes the time to sit and watch your own thoughts and wonder where they're from and why you have them, or when you have certain emotions or you feel a certain way, you ask yourself, what do I have to believe that makes me feel this way?
I want to add to that. Maybe I agree that we're limited in our options.
No,
right?
I agree we're super limited, by the way.
I don't know about the free will part, but I think the limitation is there where you're only limited to what you've seen, and that may be what he's trying to share. But I think we have free will.
I do too. And I don't think he's 100% on the side of the coin of you have zero free will, but he was making a fairly strong argument towards the fact that it's pretty limited free will, and especially if someone's not very conscious, right?
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
Right, and you don't know why you do what you do if you're doing what you do and never thought about it. But fortunately for us, we're chimps with metacognition, right?
Yeah.
Which means you can think about what you think about.
Right.
And so
you can think about what you do.
Right. Exactly. And so that's, kind of what separates us from our
animals,
our chimp ancestors / bonobos.
So now with that being said, like you have a great deal of knowledge, especially on the entrepreneur side. What does it look like for you now moving forward in your businesses?
So again, I would probably back up on that a little bit just to kind of the timeline, because it provides context, right? So I got out of the military. I got out early, and I went and started flying C-17s out of Riverside in the reserves. Okay, so that I could become
in California.
Out of Riverside there in California. So there were C-17s there, and also I believe KC-135s. So I ended up getting in the C-17 squadron, which I kind of wish I would have flew that thing active duty, because I didn't end up flying it for that long because of becoming an entrepreneur. So simultaneously, what I did was I started thinking to myself, okay, I know I want to be an entrepreneur, but what the hell do I do? What do I want to do? And of course, the first thought that came to mind was, well, why don't you open some sort of flying business? And so then the first thought that came to mind there was, well, how about a fixed base operation? But when you look at fixed base operations, man, they don't make money. It's like it's a labor of love.
That's expensive.
And it's just I've never seen anybody get super successful at that. And so I just started thinking more in a broad sense, okay, what type of business would I want to open? And so trying to lean towards the conservative side, I said, okay, I should do a franchise, right? Mm-hmm. Because franchises supposedly have a 75% better chance of success. I don't know, someone probably put that in my head, marketing somewhere. But the bottom line is, at least it's a business in a box to some degree, right? Yeah. You've got systems in place, you've got branding in place, you've got marketing libraries, you got all that stuff, right? But then, of course, you're getting fleeced by having to put a certain percentage of your gross income towards royalties, and also putting a certain percentage of your income towards licensing. Mm-hmm. Royalties and ad fund. Okay.
What's ad fund?
Ad fund is for advertising.
Okay.
But the problem is, here's the big thing. Like I always tell people, if you're ever looking into a franchise, don't do one that has national advertising. Don't do one that nobody knows shit about, right? Mm-hmm. And that you're going to have to create that brand. That doesn't make sense.
Or that's where I oppose on you with that.
Okay.
Or getting in early enough that as it grows, you're part of that.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's a different story. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. So I'm sitting there, and I end up must have pinged somebody on the web, right? And a female reached out to me, and she was actually a headhunter for franchises. That was her franchise. Okay. So she asked me a lot of lifestyle questions. You know, do you want multiple businesses? Do you want to buy yourself a job? Do you, just to kind of figure out how many employees do you want? You know, et cetera, try to help me focus on which franchise to get involved with. Okay.
So she works with a pool of franchisors, and she pairs entrepreneurs who are looking to join a franchise?
Exactly.
Gotcha. And she gets a commission out of that? That's how she runs her business?
Exactly.
Got it.
So she put about 4 or 5 different franchises on the table in front of me at the time. And I was trying to think what they were. They were like Sports Clips was one of them. Cartridge World, that was one of them. Cash Plus, which is check cashing loan business, money service business franchise. She put that in front of me, and a couple others. Well, it turns out, this was really stupid, naive, by the way, but such is life sometimes. She married me up with the one, that part wasn't stupid, she married me up with the one that fit my lifestyle questions better, which at the time was Cash Plus, okay, which was the money service business franchise. So check cashing, payday loans, prepaid cards, Western Union, all that type of stuff, right? But the biggest money makers, supposedly, with the business were the check cashing and the microloans, right?
Okay.
So, unfortunately, I dove into that one, and it was just, I say unfortunately because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
And it's a very, it doesn't take a lot of people to run it. You can do multiples of them, et cetera, et cetera.
So that one was in alignment with your goals at the time?
Kind of, sort of. But I probably should have,
What would you have done different?
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee, as my dad would say.
What would you have done different looking back now? Because you ended up doing the business.
I ended up doing the business, and I'll tell you how that progressed. But I wish I would have picked a different one. I wish I would have picked Cartridge World.
Cartridge World?
Yeah. So all that is basically like wholesale printer stuff.
Yeah.
Right? But look, man, the payday loan business, are you kidding me? Like, do you know how conflictual that is all the time? Do you know how much you're dealing with? Like, every time you give somebody a loan, they love you. Every time you want it back, they fucking hate you. It sucks.
Whose capital was it in the first place?
It was mine. I did a HELOC at the time on a property, and I took the money out for that. But that's the other thing. It's very capital intensive, and also is like
the whole business.
It's like they told me when I opened it, or when I was talking to the franchisees, they're like, "Oh, Brett, you didn't go into the loan business. You went into the collections business."
Oh my gosh, dude!
Yes.
What the hell?
Yeah. So anyway, started progressing with that, and
when you point to like that, when you say, "Hey, you didn't go into the loans business, you went to the collections business," if they told you that up front, that changed everything.
I thought. I mean, I didn't know what that was either. I didn't know if that was a big deal or if that was super problematic or whatever. I just was naive, man. Again, I was a pilot in the military, didn't really know shit. And I'm very much a fire, ready, aim type of guy.
Yeah.
And, if you want to do something, get after it type of shit. And
then figure the rest out later.
Yeah, exactly. And so, jump off the cliff and build the airplane on the way down, as they say entrepreneurs are. So I got into that, and literally, I hired employees, do the first week of opening. Guess when it was? What year?
8. Don't say 2008. 2009?
November 5th, 2007.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you're headed for a downfall.
I'm headed for a disaster.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Oh my goodness.
It gets worse. No, it gets worse. It gets worse. So anyway.
Look, I know how challenging collections are, right? My company, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars in collections from but we're selling intangible products, and I didn't put up money up front.
Exactly. So no big deal. So it's not your own money.
It's not my own money.
Yeah.
But you saying, hey, I took out this deal, and I put up my own money. Now I got to go collect on my own money. That's fucking crazy, dude.
It's crazy. You have no idea. I haven't even gotten full into this
That's
story.
why you're like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, the collections efforts suck. Everybody hates you. And my dad's like, damn, Brett, you went from war hero to loan shark in 1 year. I was like, yeah.
Let me ask you this. What's the average return on the money that you put out across all your deals? Is it a single-digit return?
So it depends, because here's the problem. Again, how high are your collections? And are you making those collections? Because if you're not, that can kill everything.
Gotcha.
Right? So the first week the business opened, I had the highest sales in franchise history. Okay, for I think both check cashing and loans, or putting money on the street, right? Look, I didn't know what I was doing, so I thought I was smart enough, and I went and got a CPA to watch my accounts. I, did the whole thing, right? And so here I am, roaring along, thinking life's going to be good because this thing's really taken off. And boom, '08 hits, right?
Yeah.
And then the line of check cashers out the door, remember all those guys that were on all the construction sites and building all Vegas up at the time? Boom, all that stopped, okay? Yeah. So everything fell off.
Was that here in Las Vegas?
Yeah, right on Las Vegas Boulevard in Wigwam.
Okay.
So that all slowed down. Then gets better.
I'm already getting nervous, man.
Yeah, you should be nervous.
I'm already getting nervous.
Yeah, you're going to be sweating here in a second. So anyway, about 5.5 months in, I've got 3 employees. Okay, one female named Verlaine Palace, and then 2 other guys. I won't even bless them by mentioning their names. Anyway, you'll see why here in a little bit. So, we're noticing that a lot of money is coming out of the account, right? Pretty quickly, but we're also putting a lot of money on the street, right? So, and I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm fine. I mean, there shouldn't be anything going on here. The franchise took me through the steps of how to open, how to close, how to check money, how to do everything. And I've got this great CPA who's checking my accounts, and he's doing my bookkeeping and everything, right? But then we start looking at these reports, some of these reports, and I start going, it seems like more money's going out of my account than is going on the street, okay? So as it turns out, there was one third-party system where you downloaded the report, were supposed to download the report every day to, it's called the net spend cards, right? Where people load money onto net spend cards. Franchise missed that, unfortunately. Didn't teach me that. And so I wasn't downloading that report, okay? So once I start figuring that all this money is flying out of my account, I start looking deeper. And actually Verlaine Palace, that's why I mentioned her, she kind of started helping me see that. Well, guess what? The other 2 dudes that were working there, they were embezzling money out of my account. They were using my account like their ATM machine. So they were basically just taking the net spend cards and putting money on them from time to time, and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it to the tune of about 30-something thousand for each of them. Okay?
Damn.
Yeah. So, look, I was naive. I was new. I guess I should have caught that. But again, I figured the training from the franchise, I was fine.
CPA didn't catch that?
CPA didn't catch it either,
Was it normal to put the money on the net spend cards for your customers?
Your customers, yeah.
Oh, so
exactly.
You can't. Okay, gotcha.
So literally, you have to realize that there's 2 cards that, that are taking
like $60,000.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like 70. And so once I figured that out, I had both of them arrested.
Yeah.
They didn't have priors, and it wasn't a violent crime, so felonies but no jail.
Gotcha.
Verlaine actually kind of helped me catch them, and they had warrants out for them, and I made sure the cops found them and went to where they were at and picked them up and all that, right?
But did you get the money back?
So luckily, not out of brilliance, but just out of an extra thing of security, I not only had an umbrella policy, but I also had an extra crime policy. So at the end of the day, I had insurance on it, and I got the money back, right? So now it's only Verlaine and I, right, at the business. And so I'm running it with her. She's 19 years old.
Okay.
And so
how old were you at the time?
Oh gosh, I was probably 30s, late 30s.
Okay.
Mid to late 30s.
All right.
And so from there, I ended up, my ex-wife ran spas, a lot of the big spas here in town. Okay. And she was like, hey, Brett, you haven't gotten a massage in a while or worked out at the gym. This Saturday, why don't you come down? And, Verlaine's working for you anyway this weekend. So come get a workout, steam, whatever, just kick it. I said, okay, cool. So I go down there, and I'm running on the treadmill, and my security company calls me, because my security company would also call me if the alarms weren't turned off and then turned on, i.e. opening and closing of the store at certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, that's weird. Verlaine is so spot on. Was shit hot. Employee, great employee.
Mm-hmm.
And if she was going to be late, she would call. Yeah, she would call. So I called her phone. Nothing, not getting anything. I'm like, that's weird. I was like, So I told my wife at the time. I said, hey, look, for some reason Verlaine's not answering me, so I'm gonna go down to the store. And she goes, okay, cool. So I go down there, I do the opening for the morning. She still hasn't called. It's like hour or two later. I'm like, that's crazy. Okay.
Did security call you because the store wasn't open yet, essentially?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So that was always what they would do if the store didn't open.
That was a trigger. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
So I texted her best friend, and I was like, hey, have you heard from Verlaine? And she's like, no, I haven't heard from her. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. I'm not thinking too much of it. Going about the day. Phone rings, my main phone, and it's her mom. And she's screaming and crying and saying she's gone. And I'm just like, then I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean she's gone? And she's gone, she's dead. And I'm like, what?
She died?
So that Friday night, after she closed the store, she would take the bus home. And so she, right at that corner where Wigwam and Las Vegas Boulevard was, there used to not be a stoplight. Okay, It used to just be yellow flashers. Well, apparently what happened was she went to go catch the bus. Well, in order to catch the bus, she has to cross the street. So there was a car that was coming, and it slowed down because it saw the yellow flashers, right? Well, there was an SUV behind it. It was like, vroom, vroom, just sped right around as fast as it could, hit her, threw her body 200 yards or 200 feet down Las Vegas Boulevard, and pretty much killed her instantly from what there was a eyewitness there that told me about it. But so that was heartbreaking. So now this is 5.5 months. That's why I say being an entrepreneur is not always the easiest thing either. Okay, this is the first 5.5 months of being in business. I have $70,000+ stolen from me, and my great little employee and great human being dead.
Did you want to quit?
Yeah, I wanted to quit. I mean, no, that's not true. I didn't want to quit, but I'll say that that's the first time in my life that I've had like uncontrollable sobbing.
Dude, you've been shot at. You like you're in the military, and then it's being in business.
It's worse. It was worse. Yeah, it was, because
this shit's crazy.
It is crazy. And so, at the time, a lot of people have been hurt on that corner, and nobody had done anything about it. So I decided to kind of stage a protest, and so I invited everybody from the neighborhood and in there. And what we did was, on, I think it was Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day, one of the 3-day weekends where a lot of people come to town, we started walking back and forth across that, and we blocked off traffic for miles in both directions on Las Vegas Boulevard. And all of a sudden, the cops come roaring up, and I'm like, shit, they're going to break us up. Nope. They jumped out of the car, and they're like, no, we're glad you're doing this.
Yeah.
They said, people get hit here all the time, and nobody's done anything about it. And they said, you just keep doing what you're doing. We're just here to make sure you guys are safe.
Wow.
And so we literally jammed up. I had 4 news channels down there that I invited down there to cover what was going on. And sure enough, some dipshit politician, took basically, ended up making a statement and saying they're putting a light in there. I don't remember who it was, probably some assemblyman or something, took credit for it.
So this is your first 150 days of being a business owner?
Yeah.
Lose $70,000. Well, stolen, $70,000 stolen.
Yep.
And they don't even get locked up. Like, they don't even get in trouble for it. And then you have an employee who unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace to Verlaine.
Yeah, exactly.
So then now what happens now? So the business is still open, or did you move around?
No, business is still open. Look, at this point.
No, today.
Oh, no, it's not.
Today.
I sold it. But,
okay.
Yeah. But, a business like that, think about any business almost, except for what you do, right? Which is kind of great, and that's why I am going to move into the online world for sure.
Yeah.
Is that you usually have to borrow money to open businesses, and that's friends and family and home equity lines of credit on houses that you own or however it's done, right? So that was something that I still had to ride out, and so I started to change that business. I started adding things to it because I could get other things on the licensing. So it morphed into, I actually got a gold license, miscellaneous gold, silver, platinum type of license to start buying gold and then selling it to get melted down and making money that way. And there was actually a bit of a boom during that time for gold. So that was pretty good for us. And let me see what our time is. We got about half hour. Okay. So I started doing that, and then I started realizing, and then I started doing title loans as well, which was another crazy business.
Is that a title loan business, or is that a title collections business?
So both, right? Because you got to repo cars if you don't get the money back on the car.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was just like.
But which one was the crazier business, the check cashing or the title loans?
They're one and the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're one and the same. They're all coming to the same store, and they're all getting loans. It's just one's unsecured. And one's secured, which is nice, right? Okay. So I started repoing cars, and then I'd have them parked out front, and people would poke their head in the store, and they would say, "Hey, man, can I buy that car? And can I put a little money down?" And I said, "Well, no, you got to how the laws work, the usury laws and such. You had to purchase the whole car, right?" And so I said, "Okay, that's interesting. Well, how do I get a license that could allow them to maybe
put some money down,
and then I carry the note, right?" So I did that.
Sounds like smart thinking.
So I did that, and problem was my store wasn't zoned correctly. But oddly enough, the convenience store that was attached to my wall was a different zoning, C2, than I was, which was H1, right, for hotels. And so I go next door to the...
C2 is commercial?
Yeah. So I go next door to the cats. Actually, they were Iraqis. Cool as hell. We had a blast with those guys. But the Iraqis that own the store next door, I said, "Hey, man," I said, "you got a closet in the back of this place, right?" And they were like, "Yeah." I said, "It's connected to that outer wall, right?" Because I couldn't put that business in my store because of the zoning. So I said, "Look, man, can I bang a hole in your wall and put a door there and use your 88 square foot closet for an office?" And they're like, "Yeah, no problem." And so so I paid the landlord a little bit of money for that, and I opened up a buy here, pay here business there. And then I also found out that it was a little easier to get money lines for rental, and I went ahead and opened up a rental car business too called Sin City Car Rentals. Okay.
In that 88 square foot?
In the 88 square foot with one employee in there. It was a buy here, pay here business and Sin City Car Rentals. Okay. So
all because of the zoning.
Yeah,
all
because of the zoning.
And did you keep your check cashing store open?
So we still have the check cashing store. That was still going. And then we started the rental car business.
It must have been tempting to just like, "Hey, man, let me just run my business out of my current spot."
It would have been nice, but it just wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So the rental car business was cash car rental, which means we rented to every drug dealer, pimp, and prostitute in town. Yeah. I mean, it was so nutty, man. When I look back at those times, I mean, I would have a 45 on me, and so would my buddies, and we would go repo cars. We from every freaking hood rat space in town, there was just craziness.
So why not look at Hertz or something of that nature, like an enterprise rental spot, enterprise rental company, like franchise that? Why not?
I did. So we're gonna get there. So it was actually a licensing agreement. I owned it's still there, Ace and Economy Rent-A-Car. Okay. That story has a bit of crazy in it as well. So anyway, you're gonna start to see a theme here from my younger days. But so crazy business. We were renting to everybody. I mean, it was like comical at one point, like the prostitutes that would come and rent these cars, We were good friends with the cops too, and the cops would call us and be like, "Hey man, we got one of your cars up here, one of the girls in it,
Did anyone steal a car from you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they'd say,
"What do you say?" "Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah." And they'd say, "Hey man, we don't want your car to get impounded, so why don't you come up and get it?" So at the time, I had my buddy Anthony, who was like my general manager for that side of things, and we'd go up there, and it was comical. The prostitute would be in the back of the cop car, they would give us the keys to the car. We'd be walking by the cop car, and she'd scream out the window, "Oh, Anthony, Brett, can I still rent cars from you guys?" And Anthony, real casually, look over and say, "Come see me on Monday."
So that was part of the business then.
It was just nutty, man. It was a nutty time, and it was a nutty business. And so I start thinking along the lines you're talking about, right? I say to myself, okay, at this point I have like 33 cars. And I'm like, you know what? We got to get into the airport. Like, how do we get into the airport? How do we get some sort of franchise model? You know, what do we do here? So we end up running into a guy at a car show. At a rental car show. And it was the guys from Economy Rent-A-Car. Okay, and that's a licensing agreement as opposed to a franchise, which I highly recommend more than a franchise, to be honest with you.
The licensing agreement?
Lot less rules, lot less BS. Yeah, it might still be a high revenue on the gross. You got to work that out. But as far as their commission, but really sweet family from Costa Rica. Okay, and so we start talking to them, and they're like, yeah, why don't let's keep talking, but here's why you do this. So when you get a franchise and or a licensing agreement, now basically you're hooked into Expedia, okay? And
what?
Expedia.
What's Expedia?
Expedia? You don't know Expedia? Hotels.
I thought you said when you. Never mind. I got it.
You got it. So now you're hooked the company Expedia. Yeah. You're hooked in with them, and you can literally turn reservations on and off like a faucet. Okay. Unfortunately, it's kind of a race to the bottom because it's discount rentals, right? To some degree, and that it does get saturated in a lot of places. So at this point, I still got no money. I've, to speak of. I need to buy more cars because now we've got this method of literally getting enough reservations where you could have like 1,000 cars. And so at the time, Sixt car rental. You know who they are, Sixt?
No.
It's European.
Sixt. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It's a European brand. It's kind of the enterprise of Europe, right?
Yeah.
They move into town. And actually, they move into the country in 2014.
2014, okay. So I just saw them popping up.
Yeah. And so they come in and they franchise out. And basically what they do...
So they don't even do their own corporate. That's what I was telling you earlier. So they're not doing their own corporate. They're franchising to get into the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's gangster shit, right? Here's what they do. They start doing they make their franchisees do prepaid. Well, in the rental car world, dude, you need your cash flow. Like
so break that down.
So people can prepay their car instead of and then the franchise holds on to those prepays for a certain amount of time before they give it to you. So they basically strangled out.
But you got to pay the cost for the maintenance of the car and so on.
Oh yeah, definitely all that. But and leasing the cars or buying them or however you get the vehicles. And they charged them $450,000 or $500K to even get into the brand, right? So they end up choking out like most of the franchises, and then if they can't pay you, then the corporate comes in, takes it over.
Yeah.
So they basically did this in like most of the major cities.
That's why.
That's why it's gangster. But so we get a call from a guy, let's call him John.
And the business has when they take it over, the business already has a customer base.
Totally.
That they didn't have.
And the franchisee is the one who spent all the costs to do everything to get it going.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like I said.
Something like that almost happened to me, but we get
Okay, cool. So I get a call from a guy from a leasing company, a fleet company for rental cars. And he says, look, man, this franchisee down here in San Diego, he got choked out, and he's having to close down. He lost like a couple $1 million. I got 83 cars down here. He's like, well, do you think you guys would be interested in them? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna do this. I don't really have the money for it.
But you have the system to get the car rented.
I do. So, and I knew I had to do something. So I fly down to San Diego, and I meet John. Not really his name, but whatever. So I meet John.
I mean, this is some gangster story, so you got to cover names. I get it.
You're going to protect some things, and you'll see even more why as the conversation goes on. I fly down there. John tells me he likes a certain Italian meal, blah, blah, blah. I say, great. I set us up at this nice restaurant. We go in, we break bread. We have a great conversation, share some wine, et cetera, get a little buzz, whatever. Walking down the street, talking about our kids, and we give a nice handshake, and he sends me $1.3 million in cars with no contract. So you talk about networking, or you talk about relationships, or you talk about how to get things done. When people trust you, they do things they wouldn't normally do, which, you got to be a good steward of that trust, obviously. So he sent me 83 cars, which was about 1.3, on a handshake deal.
Wow.
Up to Vegas, and then I ended up growing that company from 4 employees to 50 to 60 employees, and from 33 cars to 700 cars.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, things are progressing fairly well, but I need an investor, okay? And because I had a couple.
How do you get 1.3 million? Essentially, like an injection of 1.3 million. So you got 700 cars, 50 employees working with you. You get an injection, quote unquote, an injection of 83 cars, which is valued at 1.3 million. You grow the business. You have 700 cars.
Right.
Why do you need outside money?
And because
you're customer acquisition.
Yeah, and you're not going to be cash flow positive when you're scaling
you're not
that
going to be
quickly.
cash flow positive.
Right. Look at Uber, look at Amazon, look at all these different businesses. Same concept. Right. So there's a certain benchmark you need to get to before you're cash flow positive. That's life, right? So I meet a guy. I wonder if I should get his real name. At the time, solar companies are getting 30% tax credit, right? So he's able to get massive amounts of large donors. Berkshire Hathaway, what's the company, Sherwin-Williams. All these companies to help him build his company from nothing up to ended up being about 1.5 billion. Wow. So when I met this dude, I said, look, I will build 3 multi-million-dollar companies, but I need multi-millions to do it. And here are the business plans, here are the performas, et cetera, et cetera. He's like, Brett, I fucking love all this stuff.
How old were you, by the way, at that time?
How old was I?
How old were you, by the way, at that time? So this was like you've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, almost 10 years.
At that point?
Yeah.
No.
You were in the early 30s in the check cashing business?
No, that was later. It was mid to late 30s for that. This was probably so I'm 5 years in.
Okay.
And so I said, look, man, I need multi-millions to grow multi-million-dollar businesses. I said, there's 3 of them. I said, there's the buy here, pay here business. There's the loan business, but what I was going to do is create a lead management system and blow it out across the nation. So go state to state. You go and you get licensing in each state, and now you do those microloans, but you do them online, and it's put into people's account via, wire transfer basically. And so, obviously, you can shovel fucking money into that all day long. I mean, because again, you have to replace the money that goes bad, and then you also have to have a good collection system.
Yeah.
But you're talking about 30% going bad.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and then what's your profit margin on that deal?
It depends
on the money that you're giving out. So essentially, it's on the interest.
Right. It's on the interest. It was $20 per 100.
Okay.
And so basically, I said, look, man, I'm going to build this company. I'm going to build into multi-millions. I'm going to build the buy here, pay here into multi-millions. And I'm going to take this rental car company and I'm going to build it up to 1,000 cars, which will be multi-millions as well, right? So even at say 700 cars, we were doing about close to 700,000 a month. Okay. So end up building. He agrees to it. He loves it. He's like, yeah, let's do it, man. That's awesome. I want to be your primary investor, et cetera, et cetera. I say, okay, there was maybe some red flags with this guy, but I did my due diligence. I did, BenVerified.com. I did different background checks to see if there was anything out there. There's nothing out there. He was with his high school sweetheart. He didn't drink. Maybe a beer or 2. No drugs. There was nothing like that was jumping out that this guy could be a problem in the future. But I'll definitely dig more into that as we go. But so he agrees to it. He's like, cool. But then the problem was that as a year went by or 2 years went by, it started getting a little harder getting money from him. It was harder to get a hold of him. It was harder to do things, to the point where I really had to tap dance, where he was not giving me enough money, like he said he was, in order to to do the three things with these businesses.
So was the agreement to distribute the money over time?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was, but it was also very plain from the performance I gave him in the beginning that this was a huge This was three huge projects, right? And three projects that were going to need a huge cash injection for each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, I started to see that for some reason this wasn't happening fast enough. And now, think about it. If you put the freaking money out there, and then you get stopped halfway in building something, how the hell are you going to be profitable on that, right?
Completed.
Yeah, work completed. And so I tap danced, man. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of just not knowing how to maybe get another great investor that would move forward like this guy did, because this guy kind of moved forward. That should have been a red flag, by the way. He kind of moved forward very seamlessly. He wasn't asking for a lot of, anything as far as proof of purchase, but he was charging me 14% on the money. So it's almost like hard money lending, right? But I figured I could scale enough, quickly enough, and the performance said it, in order to pay that back, whatever money it ended up being, right? But again, he started slow rolling me on the cash. And so I was like, well...
And did he get equity in the deal?
No. Nope.
So it's just on the money?
Just on the money. No equity.
I see.
And so I just ended up tap dancing. I said, well, fuck, man, he's just not giving me enough for the loan business or the buy here, pay here. So, and in sequence, I hadn't done the deal yet as far as going to San Diego yet. I was building all three, but then realized that he wasn't giving me enough for only probably one of them. And so I ended up selling the loan business and basically cannibalizing the buy here, pay here business, just selling those cars off.
Mm-hmm.
And then putting everything into rental, move locations, and started putting everything into rental. And that's when that growth started from the 83 cars up to
the 700?
what almost was 700 cars.
Gotcha.
What ends up happening is that I grow the business to 700 cars, and I'm still having issues with him coming in with cash.
So he's still part of it?
He's still part of it. And at this point, which super sucked, I was already in debt to him $500K. And so I had to take that $500K debt over to the only business I had left, which was the rental car business. So imagine starting a business with $500K in debt that didn't do shit for you.
Yeah.
Okay? So that ends up going up to about $1 million. So $1 million.
The debt goes up to $1 million?
$1 million at 14%.
Wait. Just the interest on that
Yes.
goes up to $1 million over time?
No, the loan went up to $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, the loan went up to $1 million.
Right.
But because he injected more or because of the interest overall?
No, because he injected more. And I was paying that interest every month, interest only.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
So anyway, we get up to that point, and I get up to 700. I needed to get to 1,000 in order to
be profitable.
To be profitable, and to be probably at about a net of, let's call it 500 to 700K
A year?
A year.
Okay.
On that. Again, small margins, high acquisition cost. So
it seems like it's about to pay off though.
it does.
If
it
you're
does.
at $1 million, you get a $700,000 a year profit.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine
I'll
over
be
the long
fine.
term. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, my mindset was scale or die, man. Scale or die.
Uh-huh.
And so I just kept being a hard charger. Is probably kind of a little reckless, but it was what it was. I needed to get there, or I knew it was going to die, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it just starts getting.
So by this time you're $1 million in debt. You're essentially about $1 million in debt.
Yeah, and I had $14 million in assets, and I was doing $7 million a year.
What were you losing every month or every year on that deal?
We were down to probably 100 or 200,
Okay.
100K or two down. So
Okay.
it was, the margin was coming down. And like you
Okay.
said, if what I'm going to tell you didn't happen, everything would have been fine.
So what happened?
Right? So again, I can't seem to get money from this dude, and I keep hitting him up, and now I'm coming to the part of the season where you get your dip in your business cycle, right? Well, literally a year prior, I'd written to him and I was stressed the fuck out, and I said, "Hey, dude, you're not coming through on your promises. This I'm super stressed. This thing could end badly if you don't step up to the table and we can't get things going. Now, you might ask me, well, why didn't you get another investor? Okay, well, I did start doing that. I started, did the pitch deck, did everything, did get another investor, a guy who actually owns a car dealership here in town. And he was coming in and he was going to give me like a $500K injection. But unfortunately, by the time that was all ready to go and he was about to give it to me, I started looking at the writing on the wall, and I was like, man, even if I get this cash injection, it might just be a Band-Aid. It might not be enough to get me to the 1,000 cars.
Because of the initial debt?
Yeah, just because of the initial debt load and the way it was all parsing out, right? So
this is what, 3 years in? Based on
No, this is like... Yeah, it was actually about 5 years in, but that part of the scaling I was telling you about happened in about 48 months, it's called.
Okay.
So again, I'm trying to get the cash, I'm trying to do the thing, but it gets to the part of the business cycle where if I don't have a cash injection, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
So literally within 2 months, we went upside down, $200K.
You were already losing 15 to 20K a month.
Right.
How do you 10x that?
Well, basically, it was due to the dip in volume.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It was due to the dip in volume. Fucking thing went upside down. Over 200K. There was just no survivability on it, right? So I hit him up.
But 3 years in, is it per annum per year?
What's that?
Is that dip per year?
Yeah, it's every year.
Yeah. So did you not prepare for it? Or
I couldn't. I mean, I've tried.
Oh, you didn't have the cash.
I didn't have the cash. And that was the problem. And I finally threw my hands up, man, this is a lot of years of stress. You know? And I was like, you know what, fuck this. And well, it wasn't like fuck this. It was more like that's where I was at.
Yeah.
And, obviously I fought to the end.
How do you even get out of this?
You don't. And so I call him up. So this is a guy that I was friends with, I thought, and I used to fly to Cabo with him and his wife on his private jet. He always invited us to boxes. He was a NASCAR guy, so he always invited us to that stuff. We were pretty decent friends. And so it was a weekend, and everything had just gone upside down. And I wrote him and basically told him, hey, this is it, we're done. And he was like, holy shit. And I was like, he's like, look, Brett, I'm going to fly into town on Tuesday. Will you meet me at Steiner's? And right across the street from where I lived on Las Vegas Boulevard. I used to live in high-rise over there. And so I said, yeah, no problem. So he's like, we'll see what we can do. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I get up that morning and I'm like, I feel a little weird about this, And so I take my Glock 43, put it in.
Put out a 43.
Do you?
Yeah,
they're great little carry gun. So I put the Glock 43 in the abdomen carry, I put the extra clip.
I'm looking for a holster that can fit my gut.
You can put it on the side,
It pokes, man. It pokes.
So we'll just get rid of that gun. How about that? Let's do that. But anyway, so I remember him telling me that early on in his career or in his entrepreneurial world that he had borrowed money as well from a Polish mobster. Okay, and that's maybe what clicked in my mind when I decided to go ahead and put the gun on. Right, so I roll into Steiner's and I see this particular cat standing there, and I see a gentleman standing next to him who's about 6'2", looks to be Eastern Bloc. Right, and I'm like, okay. So
shit, it's time for collection.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you gonna fucking threaten me? Or you think I'm gonna be fucking scared on this shit? So anyway, okay. So we literally sit in this banana booth, right? And one cat's on one side and the investor's on the other. He's like, Brett, what happened? I'm like, what happened? I've been explaining this to you for the last year that, what needed to happen, and you didn't come to the table with it. And I start telling him the story, and this guy says, he is lying. And I go,
my fucking goodness.
And I look at him, and I look at old boy, and I'm like, who is this? I said, hey man, what's your name? My name is Patrick. I said, who the fuck is this? You know, and he goes, oh, Brett, you know, this is a guy that invests with me, and he's got money in this. I said, I don't care if he has money in this. I didn't sign any paper with him. I said, I signed it with you. And so we continue on the conversation. We're trying to figure out how to save this. I'm basically telling him, hey, there ain't no saving this, you know. This guy's like, he's like, well, maybe what we can do is we can sell off some of the cars, you know, blah, blah, blah. And this guy says, yes, and I will be the one to collect the monies. And I look at him, and I'm just starting to get fucking pissed, you know? At that point, I guess I should have been scared, but at that point, I just wanted to, like, pistol whip him or something, you know? And so he ended up saying, Brett, calm down, you know, blah, blah, blah. They end up leaving, okay? And so the next day, I wake up in the morning, it's a Wednesday, and I say to myself, man, you got two options here. One option is the wrong option, which would be go down and shoot this asshole in the head. Because don't worry, I got on Facebook right away, found where Patrick was, found his company, found what city he was in, downloaded the pictures, the whole deal, just because I wanted to know if he was going to come back my way. You know what I mean? And then I said, you do the obvious smart thing was, you know, instead of doing some dumb gangster shit like that, you need to do the professional thing, which I did. I crafted an email. I put all the players on it, from my attorney to, to him, his wife, everybody, and basically just wrote out hey, I can't believe you actually came at me like this. You have a $1.5 billion company, and you're going to come at me, threatening me with this guy. And to the same email that he didn't respond to me on prior. Boom, he responded in like 5 minutes, and was like, oh, Brett, you know, he wasn't there to threaten you. He's in a lot of business deals with me, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, in the email I put, did you fucking forget that my brother's a criminal investigator for the Pentagon, and my dad was a federal agent, and, you know, did you forget all that shit? You know what I mean? And who do you think you are doing this shit? In all a very professional manner, right? So at that point, it's triage. You know what's triage? Triage is basically how do you fix the damage, or how do I pass it on? And so literally a couple months later, 21 FBI agents raided his home.
I was waiting for the raid.
Yeah,
I was waiting for the raid.
You knew the raid was coming.
I knew the raid was coming. I knew the raid was coming.
Come on.
As soon as you said, when I woke up, I knew the raid was coming. I thought it was going to be around you, but, well, all right, cool. It wasn't around.
No.
I thought you were part of the raid.
No.
All right, so 20.
So 21 FBI agents raided his house and his business. He had been perpetuating a $900 million Ponzi scheme.
Oh my God.
With this solar company. Now, if you had to ask me, and I'd love to know the answer to this question one day, my friend, if you hear this podcast, is I think he actually got to a point where he crossed a line in the sand. Like, I don't think he started out with the Ponzi scheme idea, because basically what he was doing was he was renting mobile solar generators, right? So if this is your mobile solar generator, the IRS rated this generator at $150,000, right? Well, investors would get a 30% tax credit, which means if you're a big investor, you're salivating to jump in on this, right? Because you're going to get this investment, and you're not going to have to pay taxes, basically. Okay? So then what happens is...
proposed return on that?
So it's $150K. The investor per individual mobile solar unit was $150K. The investor puts in $44,000. It only costs this cat $25,000 to build it. He takes the rest as profit. And then he's supposed to lease these out, because, you know, they could go to remote areas where power is needed, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So he's supposed to rent them out to an end user. Well, the company was growing so fast, and he was getting so much cash injected.
Not enough end users.
Not enough end users, but he's still producing them and building them in the factory. He was supposed to have 12,000 of them out there. He had 2,000.
Oh my God.
So then what he started doing is he started burying GPSs in the desert, or all out everywhere in the country, so that when the auditors were looking at things, they would see all these GPSs out there that he supposedly had that were connected to the actual generators, the solar generators.
But it wasn't connected.
He had 55 different bank accounts. So what he was doing, and they were all shell companies. In fact, that guy who came with him, Mr. Gangsterman, was one of those shell companies, I think. I don't know if he ended up getting in any trouble or whatever. Anyway, 55 different bank accounts, and this dude was going crazy rich. Okay, like he had bought over 100 cars. He had 25 properties. He spent $19 million flying privately, and his scared little ass didn't even like to fly. He'd be over there holding his wife's hand with the window shut.
Man.
Anyway, and again, it was a guy I considered a friend, and so you got that whole side of it too. And again, I would love to know the answer to the question one day of was that, did he cross the line in the sand, or was it always a Ponzi scheme from the beginning? Pay him back? Shit, the company I had to close it.
Dissolve?
I had to close it, and I didn't. I closed the company, but I didn't close the company. I ended up handing it off to a guy named Javier, who was going to be my partner to opening. We were opening another rental car company in Denver, which is a real lucrative place to open one because they have 2 seasons. And we'd already started building a new place out there and everything.
Man,
and
you got stories for days.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, no
Thank
worries,
you so much for coming on the show. Hey, if you want to see Brett back, I know I do. I know I do. Let's go a little bit deeper. If you want to see Brett back, just let me know in the comments. We'll have Brett back, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
We'll see you.